Um, so speaking of voting, speaking of Congress doing things, one of the big things that has I'm not sure if you all have seen this stuff. One of the things that I've seen, one of the things that I've really wanted to talk about as of late, and have not gotten around to doing it, but tonight seemed like a good time to do it, was the Puerto Rican debt crisis. Puerto Rican debt crisis. Okay, Puerto Rico has debt. Okay, we all got debt. The U.S. has debt. True. We all have debt. Puerto Rico has debt. Blah 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 blah. No, not blah 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 blah. Yesterday, I believe this is the third time now that Puerto Rico has been only able to make an interest-only payment on its debt. Puerto Rico just defaulted on, I think it's a $422 million payment, which is actually like I think it was like $390 million or $370 million, something like that. They were able to pay, Puerto Rico was able to pay the interest only, did not pay anything on the principal. So why is this a big deal? Why is this news? I don't know if you guys remember last fall, there was a lot of discussions in Congress about the Puerto Rico debt crisis, about how to resolve it, how to help them restructure their debt, what needs to be done. So, okay, I'm still not understanding why is this an issue? Well, it's an issue because in the 1990s, let's go back in a little quick history lesson. In 1990s, there was a provision, section 936, that the thought was that by allowing it to eliminate, allowing it to expire, it would make the case for economic viability, and like the economic viability as Commonwealth would no longer be a feasible or beneficial arrangement, and would boost, the opportunity or support for statehood, because they have these referendums and they'll vote, and even though there is a group that wants to be independent, there's a group that wants statehood, there's still this majority that sees a beneficial arrangement to being a Commonwealth, to being basically a colonial territory, semi-colonial territory holding of the United States. What the problem was with that, certain economic benefits that did apply to Puerto Rico, like under this section 936, and there was no other provision that really took its place. The economy had negative growth. Unemployment is, I think, at like 40%. Today, poverty is like 45%, higher than any mainland U.S. state. Again, Puerto Rico is a colonial holding, so to speak. So, some lawmakers within Puerto Rico, some decision makers decided that, okay, we're hemorrhaging money. Our growth has slowed. We're not growing. We're not, this has been the largest immigration from, the island to the mainland in the last 50 years or so. Those who have the means to do so are leaving behind, which is further eroding the tax base as well, right? So a group of creditors and investors stepped in and loaned the island money at a ridiculous interest rate, right? It's risky. This is why people get into this types of business. You have these they call them vulture hedge fund managers, and they get into this business and they've loaned out all this money. They've done the same thing. This is similar to what's happened in Detroit to some extent. Some of these same entities, right? These brokerage firms, these different bond investors or whatever, they have done the same as Detroit, Argentina. It's happening in other places, not just Puerto Rico. So what's the problem? Why can't Puerto Rico just do something? Detroit went through bankruptcy, right? So why can't Puerto Rico do, so-and-so, Puerto Rico cannot just restructure its debt in a bankruptcy like a municipality or other state level, government here in the United States, because they're not an actual sovereign entity, right? Puerto Rico does not have its own sovereignty. Its decision making, like that, its financial, it's not in a position to do so. It cannot seek international financial assistance because it's not its own individual separate it's not its own individual separate country, right? It's a semi. I mean, they say semi. It's a colonial holding of the United States. United States. Some of the statehood is not necessarily looking like what Congress. So Congress has been fighting back and forth. Congress, the Republicans are a little wary about allowing Puerto Rico to restructure its debt, supposedly through bankruptcy, because Republicans who are getting ready to elect a nominee who's gone through bankruptcy, I don't know how many times, right? And it's clearly careless with his money. They're reluctant to allow Puerto Rico to restructure its debt and to have its same power and provisions through I think it's Chapter 9 or some other provisions that like states and places like Detroit have been able to do, because they claim there's been financial and political mismanagement and other things happening. There needs more oversight. There was a similar model used for Washington, D.C. in the 90s. This would be even more oversight and control in Puerto Rico, and that is, of course, not favorable. So when we're looking at some of these credit rating agents, we're not credit agents, but we're looking at some of these investment brokers, right? These vulture hedge funds like Fir Tree Partners and Appaloosa Management, Double Line Capital's another one, Avenue Capital. They bought up the discounted debts. They got involved in this junk bond scheme, and you have all these problems. So what does this have to do? I mean, you were just talking about elections and choice. The fact that Puerto Rico does not have the autonomy, it does not have the independence, it does not have the ability to decide for itself how it's going to prioritize debts and expenses. So the way things are now, Puerto Rico is required to pay back their lenders, basically their loan sharks. This is like predatory lending on steroids, is basically what it is. And it's like you pay this, but then you can't pay for teacher salaries or retirement funds. You can't pay for roads. You can't pay for schools. They've had to close, I forget what number is it, like they've had to close schools. The governor was saying that there's been difficulty providing the needed resources for police and fire vehicles even. Like it's taken, like municipalities have taken a hit. Social service, like just not social service, but like regular public works services have taken a hit because they're not able to restructure the debt. I mean, I keep drilling that home, right? Like this is so huge. Their sovereignty is non-existent in this issue. And with Section 936, Puerto Rico had like the highest per capita income when you looked at Latin America. And the 96 under GOP Congress and the Bill Clinton administration, there was a 10-year phase out, right? It was a tax exemption on U.S. manufacturing on the island. And it was supported as part of a deficit reduction measure, right, to save the federal treasury all this money. But there was no economic development plan. There was nothing for what happens next. And so we've seen this large recession in addition to the loss of this economic resource, right? This economic avenue for the island. The housing bubble, Wall Street has done a number on Puerto Rico, as has done a number on many of our communities. There was a great article in Washington Post a couple of days ago, maybe 2 days ago, about how African-American communities, focusing particularly here in Atlanta and the county of DeKalb County. DeKalb County is one of the wealthiest counties for Black people in the country. But you look at the same exact neighborhood on the south side of DeKalb, on the south DeKalb and north DeKalb, the same exact house. There's just a vast difference in property rights. And that's just where the hardest hit communities are still struggling to recover from the 2008 recession. And we're seeing something even worse, even more magnified so when we're talking about Puerto Rico. So it's all these layers on top of each other. What's the problem? So Congress is dragging its feet. Bernie Sanders is giving a speech about it. Different people talked about it. Congress is dragging its feet, and we talk about campaign finance reform. There was, got to go back to Salam at the end. I think it was Salam who posted earlier about how Hillary Clinton made a comment about how campaign finance reform would not directly impact anyone's life. Lies, I tell you. Last week I talked about how lobbyists were influencing the decision of sitting Congress members to object to Obama administration attempts to bring down or stabilize drug prices. That directly affects your life. That's campaign finance reform in action. Here, in this case, some of these same vulture, hedge fund folks, they have like shell or fake or fronts that then also lobby Congress to basically stall, deny, or not approve Puerto Rico's ability to restructure its debt. There is a measure that failed, and it's been said that it's because of those types of lobbying efforts. So campaign finance reform is undercurrent through all of this stuff. Okay, like this is a very serious issue for multiple factors. When we look at the legacy of colonialism in Puerto Rico, when we look at basically the fact that the United States just pilfers, plunders, and just takes from everywhere else. And there's when you get to something like this, and the U.S. is just sitting on its hands as Puerto Rico is struggling. I mean, struggling is not even a word. The question begs, and has to be on people on the island. It has to be on their mind. What is the point of maintaining this relationship? Because if they were an actual independent nation, they're a sovereign nation, there are many more avenues that open up than if they retain this current, this quasi colonial stature. I mean, this is the legacy of colonialism. It's not just some long forgotten history lesson. I mean, people are living it right now. So that's a brief synopsis of the Puerto Rican debt crisis. And I definitely want to switch out to some friends that I've acquired over time so they can talk, who are well more versed in this. But because of what happened yesterday, because there's a larger payment due in July, and it's such a huge issue, again, how can you do something? You could mobilize people out there, Progressive Army viewers, everyone. We want people to work for us. This is something that we need all of our Congress folks to be working on. Puerto Rico needs a damn solution to this issue. People got to be held accountable. You know what I'm saying? And we need to make sure that when these issues are important to us, we make it happen.